I was elbow deep in the guts of my '87 Camaro when my wife Marla strutted into the garage, her heels clicking against the oil-stained concrete like a countdown timer to disaster. She'd done something to her hair, bigger, blonder, more expensive looking, and was dragging a suitcase that could have housed a small family. "I'm going on a business trip with Brett," she announced, not even bothering to look at me as she checked her reflection in the car's side mirror. I wiped my hands on a greasy rag and grinned. "Tell your boss, I hope he closes the deal." The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, fixing the only thing in my life that didn't cheat on me, while my wife packed enough lingerie for a Victoria's Secret catalog shoot. When your spouse packs silk underwear for a, quote, business conference, she's either planning to seduce a client or starring in a really bad porno. Guess which scenario I got lucky with? "It's just 2 days, Jake. Don't burn the house down while I'm gone." She grabbed her keys from the workbench, knocking over my coffee mug in the process. The black liquid spread across my invoices like spilled blood. "Wouldn't dream of it, sweetheart." After 23 years of marriage, you learn to read between the lines. Marla's business trips had become as frequent as her complaints about my income. She'd clawed her way up to senior agent at Pinnacle Realty, while I stayed content running my home inspection business. Not glamorous, but honest work in a town where honest anything was becoming extinct. Our little corner of nowhere used to be something. Milltown, blue-collar backbone, the kind of place where handshake deals meant something. Now it was all strip malls and broken dreams, held together by gossip and cheap beer. Everyone knew everyone's business, which made keeping secrets about as easy as keeping snow in July. I watched Marla's Mercedes disappear down Elm Street, then pulled out my phone and scrolled to Sam's number. Kid worked nights at the Sunset Pines Business Hotel, the kind of place that charged by the hour but pretended to be respectable. Sam owed me a favor from when I'd helped his sister buy her first house. Time to collect. "Sam, it's Jake Morrison. I need you to keep your eyes open tonight. My wife's staying at your hotel with her boss, Brett Carlson. Big guy. Thinks his gym membership makes him God's gift to women. You want me to spy on your wife? I want you to witness whatever they think they're hiding. Take pictures if you have to. I'll make it worth your while." 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. A text from Sam, with a photo attachment that made my blood run cold and hot at the same time. There was my wife, half-dressed, pressed against the hotel room window while Brett's hands roamed places they had no business being. The second photo showed them on the bed, Brett's wedding ring glinting in the lamplight as he pulled Marla's dress over her head. Her face was flushed with the kind of passion she hadn't shown me in years. I set the phone down and stared at my reflection in the Camaro's chrome bumper. 42 years old, graying at the temples, hands permanently stained with motor oil and 20 years of fixing other people's problems. The town's resident nice guy, always ready with a joke and a helping hand. The kind of man women married for security, then cheated on for excitement. My phone buzzed again, another text from Sam. They ordered champagne. "Room service found her earring in his bed sheets this morning. Sorry, man." I typed back, "Keep your mouth shut until I say otherwise. This stays between us." But even as I sent the message, I knew the secret wouldn't keep long. In a town like ours, gossip spread faster than wildfire, and I had no intention of being the last to know about my own humiliation. I grabbed a beer from the mini fridge I kept in the garage and popped it open, letting the cold liquid wash away the bitter taste of betrayal. Marla thought she was so clever, so sophisticated with her real estate deals and her fancy clothes. She'd always looked down on me, on my work, on the life we'd built together. Well, two could play that game. Marla returned from her business trip, glowing like she'd discovered the fountain of youth. She hummed while making coffee, actually smiled when I asked about her weekend, and even suggested we go out for dinner. The guilt was practically radiating off her, like heat from asphalt. "How was the conference?" I asked, not looking up from my morning paper. "Oh, you know, boring presentations, networking events." Brett gave a great speech about market expansion. She turned away to hide her smirk, but I caught it in the reflection of the microwave door. I bet he did. Brett's always been good with his mouth. She shot me a sharp look, trying to figure out if there was a double meaning in my words. There was, but I kept my expression neutral. Let her wonder. That afternoon, I made my rounds through town, stopping at all the usual places where information flowed like water. First stop, Crabtree's Corner Market, where Mrs. Eleanor Crabtree held court behind the register, like a queen, dispensing gossip to her subjects. "Jake Morrison, you look terrible," she announced as I grabbed a pack of gum. "Marla's got you working too hard." "Actually, Mrs. C, Marla's been working pretty hard herself. Lots of late nights at the office with her boss." Eleanor's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Brett Carlson. That man's trouble with a capital T. His poor wife Lisa doesn't know the half of what he gets up to." "What do you mean?" "Honey, that man's been sniffing around every skirt in town since he got that promotion. Thinks he's hot stuff because he drives that fancy BMW and wears those expensive suits." She leaned across the counter conspiratorially. "Word is he's got gambling debts up to his eyeballs. Poker games down at Mickey's bar every Thursday night. I filed that information away for future use." "Well, I'm sure Marla's just focused on her career." "Mm-hmm." Eleanor's tone suggested she wasn't buying what I was selling, but she was too polite to say so directly. Next stop, Mickey's Tavern, where my best friend Mick Donnelly was polishing glasses behind the bar. The lunch crowd had cleared out, leaving just the regulars nursing their sorrows in amber liquid. "You look like someone pissed in your cornflakes," Mick said without looking up. "Something like that." I slid onto my usual stool and nodded toward the beer taps. "Make it a double." Mick had been a cop for 15 years before a bullet in the leg convinced him to find a safer profession. Now he served drinks and dispensed advice in equal measure, using his old contacts to stay informed about everything happening in our little corner of the world. "Heard Marla was out of town this weekend," he said, setting a beer in front of me. "Business trip with her boss." "Uh-huh. Same boss who's been losing his shirt at my Thursday night poker games?" I took a long sip of beer. "Brett's got gambling problems?" "Brother, Brett's got more problems than a math textbook. Lost $3,000 last month alone, and that's just what I saw. Word is he owes serious money to some very unfriendly people." Mick leaned against the bar. "Why the sudden interest in your wife's boss?" I pulled up my phone and showed him the photos Sam had sent. Mick's expression darkened as he scrolled through them. "Jesus, Jake. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be helpful. What would you do in my situation?" Mick was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "Well, I wouldn't do anything stupid or illegal. But if someone had been disrespecting me and my marriage, I might consider evening the score. Hypothetically speaking. Hypothetically. Information is power, my friend. And in a town this size, everyone's got secrets they'd rather keep buried." That evening, Marla suggested we attend the monthly community barbecue at Riverside Park. She'd never shown interest in local events before, but suddenly she was Miss Community Spirit. I agreed, knowing exactly why she wanted to go. Brett would be there with his wife Lisa, and Marla wanted to play the dangerous game of flirting with her lover in public. The park was crowded with families, the air thick with the smell of grilling meat and the sound of children playing. I spotted Brett immediately. Hard to miss a guy that size trying to look casual while his eyes searched the crowd for my wife. "There's Brett," Marla said, her voice a little too bright. "I should go say hello." "You do that, honey. I'll grab us some drinks." I watched as she made her way over to where Brett stood with his wife. Lisa Carlson was a nice woman, the kind who baked cookies for school fundraisers and volunteered at the animal shelter. She deserved better than what her husband was serving up. Brett's face lit up when he saw Marla approaching. They exchanged what looked like professional pleasantries, but I could see the heat in their eyes, the way they stood just a little too close, the brief touch of his hand on her arm that lasted a heartbeat too long. That's when I decided to make my move. I'd prepared for this moment, recording a little message on my phone earlier that day. Now I walked over to where the DJ was set up and had a quiet word with Tommy Peterson, who'd been spinning records at community events since the Carter administration. "Hey Tommy, mind if I make a quick announcement? Just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight." "Sure thing, Jake. You know how to work the microphone." I waited until Brett and Marla were standing close together, Lisa distracted by a conversation with another wife. Then I keyed the microphone and pressed play on my phone, letting Sam's recorded voice boom across the park. "Brett, you were amazing last night. I can't stop thinking about what you did to me in that hotel room. My husband doesn't suspect a thing. He's too stupid to notice." The reaction was immediate and devastating. Conversations stopped mid-sentence, heads turned toward the speakers, and then every eye in the park swiveled toward Brett and Marla. Lisa's face went white, then red, then white again as the implications sank in. "That's not," Marla started to say, but her voice was lost in the growing murmur of shocked conversations. Brett looked like he'd been hit by lightning. He grabbed Marla's arm and started pulling her toward the parking lot, but it was too late. The damage was done. The secret was out. And in a town like ours, there was no putting that particular genie back in the bottle. I handed the microphone back to Tommy and walked calmly to the beer tent, where Mick was waiting with a cold one and a satisfied grin. "Hypothetically speaking," he said, "that was beautiful." The fallout from the barbecue was swift and merciless. By Monday morning, the whole town was buzzing with the story of Brett and Marla's affair. My phone rang constantly, friends offering sympathy, acquaintances fishing for details, and a few brave souls asking if I needed anything. Marla had locked herself in our bedroom Sunday night, emerging only to grab coffee and glare at me with a mixture of rage and humiliation. She hadn't said a word about the recording, probably hoping it would all blow over if she ignored it long enough. Brett, meanwhile, had called in sick to work and wasn't answering his phone. His wife Lisa had packed a suitcase and driven to her sister's house in the next county, leaving behind a marriage that had just imploded in front of half the town. I was enjoying my coffee in the morning newspaper when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Jake Morrison. "Morrison, this is Brett Carlson. We need to talk." "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Meet me at the storage yard on River Road tonight at 9 o'clock. Come alone." The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a moment, then called Mick. "Brett wants to meet me tonight. Sounds like he's looking for trouble. Want backup?" "Wouldn't hurt, but stay out of sight unless things get ugly." The storage yard was a collection of metal buildings and shipping containers on the outskirts of town. The kind of place where people kept the possessions they couldn't fit in their houses but couldn't bear to throw away. At night, it was isolated and dark, perfect for a conversation that neither party wanted witnessed. I arrived early and parked near the entrance, keeping my headlights on to illuminate the area. Brett's BMW pulled up 10 minutes later, the engine's purr sounding expensive and out of place in the industrial setting. He climbed out of the car like a man walking to his execution. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by the desperate movements of someone whose world was collapsing around him. "You son of a bitch," he said as he approached. "You destroyed my marriage." "I didn't destroy anything, Brett. I just turned on the lights so everyone could see what was already there." Lisa left me. She took the kids and emptied our bank account. 20 years of marriage, gone because of your little stunt. I leaned against my truck, keeping my voice calm and reasonable. "You should have thought about that before you decided to screw my wife in a hotel room." Brett's face flushed red. Marla came on to me. She's the one who suggested the hotel, who bought the lingerie, who what? Who seduced the poor, innocent married man? Come on, Brett, we're both adults here. You knew exactly what you were doing. He took a step closer, his hands clenched into fists. You think you're so smart, don't you? The clever little man who outsmarted the big shot. Well, let me tell you something. I can destroy you just as easily as you destroyed me. How's that? I know things about you, Morrison. About your business, your taxes, My what? I straightened up, genuinely curious. My spotless record? My paid-in-full tax returns? My 20 years of honest work in this community? Brett's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He'd expected me to crumble at his threats, but there was nothing to threaten me with. I'd lived my life clean and simple, while he'd been cutting corners and making enemies. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to leave town. Tonight. Pack whatever fits in that fancy car of yours and drive until you hit a place where nobody knows your name or your reputation. I can't just leave. I have a job, responsibilities. You had a job. You had responsibilities. You threw them away for a few nights with my wife. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos Sam had taken. These go viral if you're still in town by Wednesday morning. Brett stared at the images, his face pale in the phone's glow. You can't do this. Watch me. That's when he snapped. Brett lunged forward, swinging a wild punch that would have connected if I hadn't been expecting it. I stepped aside and let his momentum carry him past me, then grabbed a baseball bat from my truck bed. I told you I wasn't going to hit you, Brett. That would be assault, and I'm not stupid enough to give you something to use against me in court. I hefted the bat and walked over to his BMW. But your car? Well, that's just property damage. The first swing took out the driver's side headlight with a satisfying crash. The second caved in the hood, setting off the car alarm. Brett screamed and rushed toward me, but stopped when I turned the bat in his direction. Stay back, or the next swing connects with something more personal than your car. I systematically destroyed every piece of glass and dented every panel I could reach, while Brett stood helplessly by and watched his $60,000 status symbol turn into expensive scrap metal. The car alarm wailed like a banshee, but we were far enough from town that no one would investigate. When I was finished, I tossed the bat back in my truck and pulled out my phone to record a video message. This is what happens when you disrespect other people's marriages, I said, panning the camera across the demolished BMW. Brett Carlson thought he could take whatever he wanted without consequences. Turns out he was wrong. I stopped recording and showed Brett the video. This gets uploaded to every social media platform in town if you're not gone by Wednesday. Brett looked at his ruined car, then at me, then back at the car. The fight had gone out of him completely, replaced by the hollow-eyed stare of a man who'd lost everything that mattered to him. "You're insane," he whispered. "No, Brett. I'm just tired of being the nice guy who finishes last." I climbed into my truck and started the engine. Mixed towing service opens at 7 a.m. I'm sure he'll give you a fair price on hauling that wreck to the junkyard. As I drove away, I could see Brett in my rearview mirror, standing alone in the darkness, next to the remains of his pride and joy. It was a sight I'd remember for a long time. The next morning brought unexpected visitors to my front door. Tom Bradley and Steve Hoffman, two guys I'd considered friends since high school, stood on my porch looking uncomfortable and angry. "Jake, we need to talk," Tom said without preamble. I invited them in, but they remained standing in the foyer like they didn't want to stay long. Both men looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, but they'd come here with a purpose. "What's on your minds?" Steve cleared his throat. "It's about what happened at the barbecue. And whatever you did to Brett Carlson last night." "What about it?" "You've gone too far, man," Tom said. "We get that you're hurt about Marla, but this public humiliation thing isn't right. Brett's a good guy who made a mistake." I stared at them both, trying to process what I was hearing. A good guy? He's been screwing my wife for months, maybe longer. He destroyed his own marriage and mine, and you think I'm the problem? "Look, nobody's saying what Brett did was right," Steve said, "but the way you're handling it is making everyone uncomfortable. People are starting to talk about you, Jake, and not in a good way. Let me guess. They're saying I'm the crazy husband who can't handle his wife cheating, so I'm taking it out on the whole town." Tom nodded reluctantly. "Something like that. Lisa Carlson is devastated. Their kids are asking questions nobody wants to answer. You turned a private family matter into public entertainment." "Private?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. There's nothing private about screwing someone else's wife in a hotel room. There's nothing private about flaunting an affair at community events. They made it public the moment they decided to betray their spouses. "That doesn't give you the right to destroy people's lives," Steve said. "I didn't destroy anything. I just revealed what was already broken." But I could see they weren't buying it. These men, who I'd known for decades, who'd been groomsmen at my wedding and godparents to children I'd never had, were looking at me like I was a stranger. A dangerous stranger. "We think you should apologize," Tom said finally. "To Brett, to Lisa, to the whole community. Show some class and take the high road." The high road? I felt something cold and hard settling in my chest. Where was the high road when my wife was spreading her legs for another man? Where was the high road when Brett was lying to his family and mine? Where was the high road when everyone in town knew what was happening except me? "That's not," Steve started to say. "Get out." They both stared at me. "Jake, come on. We're trying to help you here. Get out of my house. Now." Tom and Steve exchanged glances, then headed for the door. Tom paused with his hand on the doorknob. "You're making a mistake, Jake. This path you're on, it doesn't end well for anyone." "Maybe not, but at least I'll have the satisfaction of knowing I didn't roll over and play dead when someone tried to destroy my life." After they left, I sat in my living room and stared at the wall where Marla and I had hung our wedding photos. 23 years of marriage, reduced to awkward conversations and pitying looks from people who used to respect me. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Tina Walsh, one of Marla's colleagues from the real estate office. "Jake?" "It's Tina. I was wondering if we could meet for coffee. There's something I need to tell you about Marla and Brett." We met at Rosie's Diner, a greasy spoon that had been serving the same menu since the Eisenhower administration. Tina looked nervous, fidgeting with her purse and glancing around like she expected to be overheard. "I should have told you this months ago," she said after we'd ordered coffee, "but I didn't know how, and I wasn't sure it was my place." "What are you talking about?" "The affair. I knew about it from the beginning. Marla confided in me, asked for my advice about hotels, about how to keep it secret." Tina's voice dropped to a whisper. "I told her she was making a mistake, that she should either fix her marriage or end it honestly. But she wouldn't listen." I sipped my coffee and waited for her to continue. "There's more, though. Brett isn't the only one. Marla's been having affairs for years, Jake. Different men, different excuses, but always the same pattern. She gets bored, finds someone exciting, has her fun, then moves on when the novelty wears off." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "Years?" "At least 5 that I know of, maybe longer." Tina reached across the table and touched my hand. "I'm so sorry, Jake. I should have told you sooner, but Marla's my friend, and I didn't want to be the one to destroy your marriage. My marriage was already destroyed. I just didn't know it yet." Tina nodded sadly. "She's been planning to leave you for a while now. She's been moving money around, talking to lawyers, getting her ducks in a row. The thing with Brett was supposed to be her exit strategy. She was going to leave you for him, take half of everything, and start fresh. But Brett's married. She thought she could convince him to leave Lisa. When that didn't work out, she was going to leave anyway and find someone else." Tina pulled a manila envelope from her purse. "These are copies of documents she asked me to hold for her. Bank statements, property records, things like that. I thought you should see them before she makes her move." I opened the envelope and found evidence of financial betrayal that went far deeper than I'd imagined. Marla had been systematically draining our joint accounts, transferring money to private accounts I didn't know existed. She'd even taken out a second mortgage on our house without my knowledge, using forged documents to make it happen. "How long have you known about this?" "The financial stuff?" "About 6 months. She said she needed to protect herself in case you ever found out about her affairs and tried to leave her with nothing." Tina's laugh was bitter. "She actually convinced herself that you were the villain in this story." I stared at the papers, my hands shaking with rage. "Why are you telling me this now? Why help me?" Tina was quiet for a long moment. "Because you didn't deserve what she did to you. And because I'm tired of being her accomplice. What she's doing isn't just wrong. It's cruel." That night, I sat in my garage with a beer and the envelope full of evidence, planning my next move. Marla had been playing a long game, setting me up for financial ruin while she lived it up with a series of lovers. She thought she was so clever, so sophisticated, so far ahead of her simple-minded husband. Time to show her how wrong she was. The monthly community center meeting was standing room only, which wasn't surprising given the recent drama. Everyone in town wanted to see how the Jake Morrison situation would play out, whether I'd slink away in shame or make an even bigger spectacle of myself. I arrived early and set up my equipment, a laptop connected to the center's sound system and projector, ostensibly for a presentation about home safety inspections that I'd volunteered to give. The topic was boring enough that most people would probably tune out, which was exactly what I wanted. Marla walked in with Tina, both women dressed like they were attending a funeral. My wife's face was carefully composed, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she avoided making eye contact with anyone. She'd been getting the cold shoulder from most of the community since the barbecue incident, and the isolation was clearly wearing on her. Brett was notably absent, having taken my advice about leaving town. Word was he'd driven straight to his brother's place in Arizona, leaving behind his job, his house, and what remained of his reputation. Lisa Carlson had filed for divorce and was already talking to lawyers about asset division and custody arrangements. "Good evening, everyone," I said into the microphone as the crowd settled down. "Thank you for coming out tonight. I know we're all here to discuss community issues, but first I'd like to address the elephant in the room." The murmur of conversation died instantly. Every eye in the room was focused on me, waiting to see what I'd do next. As most of you know, my wife Marla has been having an affair with her boss, Brett Carlson. What you might not know is that this affair has been going on for over a year, and it's just the latest in a series of betrayals that go back to the beginning of our marriage. Marla shot to her feet. "Jake, don't do this, please." "Sit down, Marla. You've had your turn to speak. Now it's mine." I clicked to the first slide of my presentation, a photo of Marla and Brett in the hotel room. tastefully cropped but leaving no doubt about what they were doing. This was taken at the Sunset Pines Hotel 3 weeks ago, but it's not the only evidence of my wife's extracurricular activities. The next slide showed bank statements documenting the money transfers, the secret accounts, the forged mortgage documents. A collective gasp went up from the audience as they realized the scope of Marla's deception. While I was working 60-hour weeks to support our household, my wife was systematically stealing our assets and preparing to abandon our marriage. She's been planning her exit strategy for months, using affairs as a way to audition potential replacement husbands. "That's not true," Marla shouted, but her voice cracked with desperation. "Isn't it?" I clicked to the next slide, a series of text messages between Marla and various men, explicit conversations that left nothing to the imagination. "These are from your phone, Marla. The phone that syncs to the iPad you left at home. The iPad I've had access to for months." The crowd was riveted now, leaning forward in their seats like they were watching a particularly juicy soap opera. I could see phones coming out, people recording video and taking pictures. By tomorrow morning, this would be all over social media. "But the real kicker," I continued, "is that none of this was Marla's idea. She's not smart enough to orchestrate this level of deception on her own. She had help from someone we all trusted, someone who's been playing both sides of this game from the beginning." I turned to look directly at Tina, who had gone pale as a sheet. Tina Walsh has been feeding my wife advice on how to hide her affairs, how to move money around, how to cover her tracks. But what Marla doesn't know is that Tina has also been feeding information to Brett's wife, to me, and to anyone else who might be useful to her. Tina stood up, her hands shaking. "That's a lie, Jake. I was trying to help both of you." "Were you? Or were you trying to create as much chaos as possible because you blame me for what happened to your last job?" The room went dead silent. I could see people trying to remember what I was talking about, putting together pieces of a puzzle they didn't know existed. 5 years ago, Tina was embezzling money from Morrison Home Inspections. Small amounts at first, then larger ones as she got bolder. I caught her, fired her, and reported her to the authorities. She lost her house, her car, her reputation. She's been planning her revenge ever since. I clicked to the final slide. Copies of emails between Tina and various people in town. Messages that showed her manipulating situations, spreading gossip, and orchestrating confrontations. Tina convinced Marla to have the affair with Brett. She encouraged Brett to think he could get away with it. She fed information to both sides, keeping the drama alive and escalating until it exploded in everyone's faces. She wanted to destroy my marriage, my friendships, my standing in this community. And she almost succeeded. Tina was backing toward the door now, her face a mask of panic and rage. "You can't prove any of this." "I don't have to prove it in court, Tina. I just have to prove it to the people in this room. The people who trusted you, who considered you a friend, who let you into their homes and their lives." She turned and ran, pushing through the crowd and disappearing into the night. The room erupted in conversation as people processed what they'd just learned, the implications rippling through the community like stones thrown in a pond. Marla was still standing, tears streaming down her face, looking around the room for support that wasn't coming. The women who had been her friends were staring at her with disgust and disappointment. The men were shaking their heads in disbelief. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said, her voice barely audible over the crowd noise. "But it did go this far, Marla. And now everyone knows exactly who you really are." I packed up my equipment while the crowd slowly dispersed, people filing out in small groups, their conversations animated and intense. Tomorrow there would be phone calls, social media posts, and endless speculation about what would happen next. Tom Bradley and Steve Hoffman approached me as I was loading my car. "Jesus, Jake," Tom said. "We had no idea it was that bad." "Now you do." "What are you going to do about Marla?" Steve asked. I handed him a manila envelope. "Divorce papers, filed this morning. She can keep the house. It's mortgaged to the hilt anyway, thanks to her financial games. I'm starting over somewhere else, somewhere people don't know my story." "We're sorry," Tom said, "about what we said the other day, about taking the high road." "Don't be sorry. You were trying to be good friends, but sometimes being a good friend means helping someone fight back instead of roll over." I shook hands with both men, then climbed into my truck and drove away from the community center, away from the town that had been my home for 42 years, away from the life that had been built on lies and sustained by willful blindness. In my rearview mirror, I could see Marla standing alone in the parking lot, illuminated by the harsh glow of the streetlights. Finally understanding that her carefully constructed world had collapsed around her. I rolled down the window and let the cool night air wash over my face, tasting freedom for the first time in decades. They'd said I'd never amount to anything, that I was too nice, too simple, too trusting to survive in a world full of predators and manipulators. Turns out, I make a hell of a villain when I put my mind to it, when I put my mind to it, and 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 I put my mind to it.